This is Darker Days Radio's Dark Iron Kingdom special. What's going on, Chris?
Hi, yeah, it's really, everything's really cool right now. I have miniatures that turned up in the post. We have an amazing Kickstarter going on right now, which obviously we're going to talk about in the show, so yeah, pretty much everything's really good. I've been playing a certain war game recently, and painting lots of stuff. I finished painting stuff. Yeah, everything's great. You've got some new stuff as well, miniature-wise. I guess we can talk about all our new toys, considering they're all related to the show. And sure. We have an excellent returning guest to Darker Days. We have Simon Berman, who is back once again to talk about everything that is Iron Kingdoms related, be it Warmachine, Hordes, and a certain Kickstarter, and of course everything that we're hoping to see in future from the Iron Kingdoms RPG. So, Simon, welcome back to the show, and how are things going? I guess busy right now. It's the
busy doesn't even begin to describe it. Thanks for having me back on the show, though. It's good to see you guys, or talk to you guys again.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's really good to have you back on, because there's like loads of stuff to talk, because I think we had you on the show. Mike, when did we have him on the show? Was it
probably October 2012?
Yeah, right. So it was
sounds about right.
A short time, a few months or so after Iron Kingdoms RPG was released, and there's been a lot of stuff out since then. So how is everyone? What cool stuff have people picked up recently? I've recently had a certain unit of undead turn up, as I finally found someone that could ship it to me. So that's important for me for roleplay wise, because I'm playing through part 1 of the Witchfire trilogy. So
good.
I think I'm up to the point where I now need the undead. They've gone into a certain tomb and scared a bunch of goblins. And I've got some more scenery, and I've got some bits and pieces, and I'm waiting for even more stuff to turn up in the post. I've got Aster Kane, another heavy warjack, and I've got some magnets now and a pin vice drill to magnetize stuff. So I'm pretty much set for a whole slew of new miniatures to paint, even though I've got some from years ago that need to be repainted. So that's pretty cool. Mike, you've said you've got some new minis.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Chris, you've been playing Warmachine for a little while, and I never really got into it. But then we had this guy on the show, Simon Berman, and you kind of convinced me to maybe give it a shot. And now I've got a Signar group, Scorn. I just got Legion of Everblight in the mail, so...
Oh, yeah, I really need to get the Hordes box set. So, obviously I finished painting all the Menoth, all the Khador, repainted all my Signar, which are the original ones from 10 years ago when they first came out. So, yeah, I played it that original Prime. And I've got my Trolls painted, and James, who sometimes is a guest co-host for like some of the other topics that we do on Darker Days, he's got his Hordes box. So I've been trying to do by long distance, finding relevant YouTube videos and talking to him online about painting, so he feels more confident about painting. So, because obviously I've painted lots of stuff, so it's really annoying when you want to help someone and be there and hold the brush and show them, but you can't because you're in another country. Yeah. So Everblight miniatures. Oh, yes,
awesome
I really
stuff.
want.
Yeah, I know.
I really want. You got anything else mini-wise? So for Iron Kingdoms wise?
Nope, that's it. And I think that's enough about us, really. I mean, this episode is really all about Simon over there and what's going on with Privateer Press. So,
yes,
a lot of things have been going on. Should we just start off with the really big thing?
Yes.
Let's talk about the Kickstarter. So, Simon, went live yesterday. Are you guys happy with the response?
We are blown away. We went live on Wednesday, July 10th, and our goal was $550,000. And for anybody who's not aware, we here at Privateer Press are running a Kickstarter campaign right now for a video game of Warmachine called Warmachine Tactics. and we asked for $550,000, and that's kind of get the game just off the ground. And we hit that number last night after less than 35 hours, which blew us away. Like we are totally humbled and overwhelmed, and we can't believe the response we're getting from our audience and the bigger video game community now, and it's just been awesome.
Yeah, I mean, you're almost. I'm just looking at the total right now. You're almost. Yeah, I'm sure by this time tomorrow you'll be well past the first stretch goal as well at this rate.
Our first stretch goal is $650,000, and we're in striking distance of that now at less than $7,000. So I think it's gonna be the next couple of hours.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's so as you say, it's based on Warmachine, and this is a way for Private Press to obviously with I get it right, it's White Moon
Dreams.
Yeah. So, because Private Press and White Moon Dreams have been teamed up actually for a while with developing a computer game based on the Iron Kingdoms IP, but this is a way of I guess getting some of the hard work that's already been done, like some of the design elements and some of the obviously the 3D computer sculpts of all the things that have been designed, and kind of the Kickstarter allows you to sidestep the traditional computer game publishing route and get something out in a quicker way, and also that allows the IP to be disseminated better to a new audience. Is that right?
That's part of it. I think one of the things that's really exciting about Kickstarter for us is we had a previous video game in various stages of development with White Moon Dreams. It was more of an action game, kind of a Dynasty Warriors kind of thing.
Yeah.
We were very close to getting that published. And because of kind of the tumultuous nature of the AAA video game title world, it can be very difficult to work with you if your own intellectual property in your own setting in your own world like we do with Warmachine. A lot of the big companies find it's simply cheaper for them to kind of work on their own and not deal with a smaller company like that, and simply make their own games. And we had some very frustrating experiences. We were very close to getting the game published, and at the end of the day, we looked at crowdsourcing when that started to really become a big thing about 18 months ago, and crowdfunding, and we examined it really carefully because we knew we would want to just jump into it because Kickstarter can potentially be a very dangerous thing.
Yes.
If you don't cover all of your bases with it, and for a project this big, we knew we needed to really take our time and do it right. So we did a lot of research, and we worked very closely with White Moon Dreams about what we could and couldn't do. And when we decided to really put this thing together several months ago, we really dotted our I's and crossed our T's, and hopefully have a pretty cool campaign. But the great thing about it is it means that we're going to be able to produce this game without outside investors or another video game publisher telling us to change things. So we're going to be able to create the Warmachine game that we want, and hopefully one that feels right and looks right and plays like Warmachine in the spirit of the Iron Kingdoms for our audience.
Excellent. So Warmachine Tactics is, as we said, is a turn-based strategy game, but obviously there are some changes to accommodate the fact it's a computer game, and that obviously you can't do a one-to-one translation of a game that's a tabletop game into a computer game. I mean, we know this from the amount of stuff we've heard about, like certain MMOs. You can't take certain role-play rules that work great when you're face-to-face role-playing, and you can't just implement them in a computer game because you just have chaos. So, I mean, what bits can you tell us of maybe how that's going, or just tell us more about the game in general, like what kind of play style we should expect, what's going to be reminiscent, or what kind of interesting features there'll be, and really what we can expect from this game.
Sure. So, as you said, it's not meant to be a sort of one-for-one computer game version of Warmachine. It is turn-based, and it is squad-based. So it's got a little more in common with, say, XCOM than it would with a huge, army-based game like Total War or something. Mm-hmm. But the idea is that you're going to play a warcaster and his or her warjacks, so the battle group, and then they'll be supplemented by a number of warriors who take the place of kind of solos in Warmachine. And those warriors, they might be actual solos in Warmachine, like a Manhunter for Khador, for example. Don't quote me to the Manhunters in the game. I don't have a full content list in front of me, but that kind of solo, or it might be, say, a Winter Guard or a Trencher. So you're going to take kind of a small squad and fight over these, unique and important battlefields against an opponent, or in the single-player campaign.
Excellent, and that's also important to point out that there's going to be a fully developed single player campaign mode, but there's also going to be a multiplayer mode, which currently, as we said, is you'll be able to play as Signar or Kador, but the first stretch goal that is being rapidly approaching will unlock the two core main factions of the setting, so it will give us options to play as Crix and as Protectorate of Menoth, which is really cool.
Yeah, we're very excited about that.
Yeah. So I think with the multiplayer, I mean, does that allow for kind of a fully multiplayer kind of like Mangled Metal? So not just between two human players, but like between, say, up to 4, maybe? I don't know. I'm just kind of...
the core game is going to support 2-player multiplayer, but keep an eye on your stretch goals, because if we start knocking these out, we've got a lot of things to show off.
Yeah, I'm sure people would be... I mean, even to think... I'm sure, in the future, the idea of having a 4-way bust up between warjacks would be amazing, because the fact that you do that in the tabletop is brilliant. And also there's some excellent add-ons and pledge levels with this Kickstarter. So I think the one the first level of major, the major pledge is like $20 gets you the game, which is great because $20 is not that much. And then beyond that, you've got physical rewards as well. And of course, one of the key ones is the fact that you can have a limited edition sculpt of the Warcasters that are appearing in the game. So that's really cool, because there's like 4, 5, I guess. Wait up, no, not 4. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 with a variance. There's 8 new kind of figures which will be available to people that pledge to the computer game, and they get new miniatures basically for the war game, which is amazing. And that's also, as I think it's important to note that you guys have done some really good work in adjusting the shipping costs, so that obviously the option to get those miniatures is obviously more lucrative to people that are based in the UK and in Europe. Cool. What other kind of type of add-ons and and rewards can we expect then? Because there's a lot of cool stuff.
Well, we have a whole bunch of very cool digital rewards. You get things like alternate color schemes, like you can play your Signar in the Fort Fault combat dress colors, stuff like that. Solid gold warjack modifications for your multiplayer games. But I think one of our coolest rewards is the physical rewards, and that's those new novice warcasters that we were talking about before.
Mm-hmm.
And working with White Moon Dreams has been really quite exciting for us, because most of those guys are Warmachine players. We've been working with them for a really long time. So when we started developing the single-player campaign for Tactics, we knew we wanted to introduce a new character to the world of Warmachine. So we're seeing Lieutenant Allison Jakes, who is Signar and Journeyman Warcaster. And the single-player campaign is her story. It's kind of the crucible in which she goes from being a novice Journeyman Warcaster to a full-fledged Warcaster. There's some twists and turns along the way. So, we're introducing her in the video game, and we developed her character and her art in conjunction with White Moon Dreams. And so it's been pretty exciting to kind of bring her to life in 2 places at once, which is a big first for us. And then we came with all these other characters, all these other journeymen, or rather I should say novice warcasters, because journeyman is actually a Signaran rank or title. But these other novice warcasters, that's letting us do new stuff for all the other Warmachine factions, because they've never nobody but Signars previously had access to the journeyman rules before. And now, everyone, including Mercenaries, Retribution, Protectorate of Menoth, Crix, and Kador, are all going to get a chance to have those models with those rules and kind of add a new dimension to their gameplay. And then the other big first for us, really set of firsts, is the new Warcaster we're introducing, Commander Dalen Sturgis, who starts out as a Signaran Warcaster in the single-player campaign. And we're releasing his model and rules with as rewards for the Kickstarter as well. He starts out as a Signaran Warcaster, and over the course of events, some things kind of go wrong, and he comes back as Sturgis the Corrupted, a Crix Warcaster. So we actually are releasing a model for the first time that comes with alternate pieces to build into a Signar or Crix Warcaster. He comes with 2 sets of cards, so you can build him and play him for whichever army you have. So we're pretty excited about him too.
Yeah, all the new warcasters and the novice warcasters are really awesome. Like, already looking at the rules, like, I'm very excited as a Signar player to be getting hold of any of those, really. And I mean, the other cool thing is the fact that, as I said, you can look at the rules now for them. So you can, but even before you've got the miniatures, you can sit down and start planning new army lists around these forthcoming miniatures, which is just awesome. And of course, there's some other physical rewards. There's like, let me get this right. Let me think. I say physical rewards. So there's some more digital ones, like there's the soundtrack, and then there's also some very big rewards. So there's like the full, what's it called?
The war chest.
The war chest, yeah, which is like massive.
Get a lot of stuff in there.
Yeah, so obviously for people that have got, let me just check that. Like, that's what pledge level is that one on? It's yeah, and you get a lot of stuff in the war chest. So what other type of physical rewards are there beyond the miniatures?
At some of the higher level rewards, we start to, when you're purchasing multiple miniatures as rewards in addition to the video game and all the digital rewards. We have some patches, like the shirt patch, which shows that rank and title for a Signar, and you can wear that on your jacket or your army bag. The Mage's patch, similarly, just a higher rank. Then we have things like dice. We, of course, have the war chest itself, which is a very cool wooden box with a number of faction logos on it. That comes with all that other stuff, and war chest backs let you get a physical copy of the game as well.
Oh, great. Excellent. Oh, and that's also an important thing to bring up, is the fact that the computer game is going to be available both on PC and on Macs. So,
thank you.
Thank you, says Mike.
Speaking from Skype on a brand new MacBook Air, I feel your pain, so I'll be happy to be playing the game alongside you.
Brilliant. That's good news for everyone. And obviously, I mean, I've read there's some FAQs on things with regard to DRM, and that's all basically, your hands are tied depending upon which distribution methods are used.
That's all platform dependent. Whenever we can avoid DRM, we will be doing so. So only when a platform installs its own DRM, like, we obviously want to be on Steam, and they have their own digital rights system to manage their distribution of content through the platform. But we are striving to avoid true DRM at all costs.
Yeah, excellent. Mike, do you have some more questions for us about the Kickstarter right now? Then.
Not particularly. I'm already backing it, so...
Yep, I'm backing it. I've upped my pledge level the moment I read, yes, you can have it sent to Germany cheaper. I was like, okay, that's a pledge level up. And I guess that would have accounted for quite a lot of the boost over today as well, I guess, with the moment that people could go, yes, I can get all the add-on miniatures and pay a flat UK shipping fee or pay a reasonable European shipping fee. So that's just stunning.
Glad we could work that out. And then, of course, we got another boost from Penny Arcade. Wrote their comic book strip today about us.
Oh, so. Yeah, I did see that one. Also, the thing, of course, is all the new Warcaster artwork is, like, stunning. Again, it's top-notch work, and it's no surprise when you are constantly flicking through a certain RPG right now to expect equally stunning artwork for the new characters. And the other thing I'm liking the look of is the I would say just the kind of the geography of the in the sample pictures for the battlefields. So you'll be fighting on like multiple levels. So you've got like you'll have barriers and trenches and so forth. So it'll be really interesting to see how diverse these battlefields, in particular for multiplayer, will get. Because I'd be particularly interested in like what nasty things are built into the game if, say, I don't know, a heavy warjack picks up another one and chucks it in a body of water, which is always a good way of taking out someone's warjack. Cool. I think that pretty much covers the Kickstarter. Obviously, we've said that if people want to get in on the Kickstarter, it's like to get just the game is $20. So, that's really, really great, especially considering that as more people back it, you're going to get more bang for your buck, essentially, with the game as more stuff's unlocked and more factions, and I'm sure even more options of what you can do in the game.
We've got some really cool stuff lined up for the stretch goals. We haven't shown off the majority of it yet. And, as we start reaching them, we'll start revealing new stuff, and most of it's going to go straight into the game, one way or the other. So spread the word if you want to see stuff in the game. Thank you for your support.
Excellent. Well, yeah, I've been sharing it across like pretty much any social network I make use of right now.
I can't say how much we appreciate everybody who spread the word and helped us out with this thing. It's just overwhelming.
Cool. I think if that covers the Kickstarter for now, I think we can move into generally what's going on right now and on the horizon for, say, Warmachine and Hordes, considering that feeds into our main topic, which is on Iron Kingdoms. So obviously, recently, since the RPG was released, we've had a new faction for Warmachine, which is the Convergence of Cyrus, which is essentially the military order operates for the Cult of Cyrus, the machine goddess, and presents some unique elements to Warmachine. And obviously, for the role-play game right now, that's added in obviously new miniatures to use and some new careers that have turned up in no quarter. So, how would you explain the Convergence of Cyrus to Warmachine or Hordes players, or people that are obviously playing Iron Kingdoms and are thinking they may make good antagonists for their game?
Or player characters. We actually offer
player characters, yes. Yeah.
That's the last issue of No Quarter magazine.
Yeah.
The Convergence of Cyrus is sort of the inner upper echelons of the Cult of Cyrus. Cyrus cultists worship the goddess Cyrus, who they believe is a goddess of machines and perfect order. Recently, the inner workings the inner leaders of the sect have launched what they call the Great Work, which has brought them into a phase of conflict with the powers of the Iron Kingdoms as they strive to bring the goddess to Kane by rewiring the ley line system of the planet. And this is kind of inconvenient for a number of nations and other people who use the ley lines, such as the Circle Orboros. So the Cult of Cyrus and the Convergence of Cyrus are now in open conflict, if a limited one, with a number of powers of the Iron Kingdoms. And the Convergence, which actually just released on Wednesday, the same day as our Kickstarter, they are an all-new Warmachine faction. The army book's out, has a number of warcasters. The army has some pretty cool and unique mechanics regarding focus and warjacks. Their warjacks are actually called vectors. They work a little bit differently than traditional warjacks, but they're much more focus efficient. There's some pretty cool tricks that you can pull with that. So it's a pretty exciting time to be a Warmachine player.
Yeah, I mean, they're obviously really unique because of the first thing that you notice when you start looking at the stat lines of these vectors is obviously they're dependent upon the warcaster that's leading that battle group. So that's immediately an obvious difference to all the standard warjacks used by people. So that's really cool. Of course, I'm quite interested in them because, of course, in Witchfire Trilogy Part 2, which, I'm playing through Witchfire Trilogy right now with my roleplay group, there is a Temple of Cyrus. So the fact that I can grab a few miniatures and put them in, or I don't know, maybe a certain player in my group has expressed an interest in the Convergence of Cyrus to play Warmachine, it's like, excellent. That means you can bring your warjacks along and I can just drop them into the RPG when I want to have a big badass in a certain temple. And that's really exciting. And yeah, the new careers and everything have been good. But, so you say they're kind of like the way they make use of focus is slightly different. Is there any way you can explain that in how they're efficient with it? Is it just that they get more out of their focus, or yeah, go for it.
Essentially, Cirrus vectors have what's called an induction node, and that lets warcasters kind of trickle focus out. So when a Cirrus vector uses its focus, it can move that focus to another warjack within a certain position or within a certain range of it, and this means that the efficiency of your battle groups is drastically increased.
Ah, right. Okay. So I imagine then that means a lot if, say, you've pumped in the focus onto one vector because you want to make sure you kill something, you do particularly well and you kill it, and you've got that excess focus. That means you can then siphon it off onto something that needs that excess that's left over. Is that right?
And I believe you can even do it with just the focus as it's spent. So you can sort of just move it from one warjack to another. So as they activate, they sort of empower the entire battle group.
That's really wicked. That's very, very different to all the rest. Wow.
They really play like a clockwork machine, right? You put your conversions pieces in the right places on the board, and they all start working in concert with each other. But just like a piece of clockwork machinery, if you take the right gear out, it all starts to fall apart. So they're a pretty challenging faction both to play against, but they do have some weaknesses that can be exploited by a canny enemy.
Cool. I'm trying to think what else was being new out for Warmachine that I've seen on the releases. Obviously, in the time frame since the RPG, I think all of the Colossals have been released, which again are super heavy warjacks, I think is the best way to describe them. And they look, again, all are completely stunning. Really great miniatures. I have no idea when I might add them into my anything like that into my collection right now, because I have to think I might move country, and a big miniature like that scares me on moving country. So I have to think in a different way. And what else have we got for Warmachine then about to release or coming up that we can expect? I've watched a few lock and load videos, and there's a new book for Warmachine coming up soon. I say soon being in however many months' time.
We've got a lot of stuff coming out for Warmachine and Hordes. More convergence stuff will be coming out over the course of the year. I think sort of a side project that we're really excited about is High Command, which comes out next month.
Oh, yeah.
Deck building game for Warmachine, and that'll be followed by High Command Hordes in October. So I think that's going to be pretty cool. Everybody in the company's been playing that incessantly ever since we started getting copies in the warehouse. So that's going to be pretty big for us too. And I think it's pretty cool to see Warmachine, making that move both to the video game and tactics and into the sort of deck building non-collectible card game in High Command.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, I haven't yet. I've read a little about High Command. I mean, what have I been playing recently? I think the nice thing about the fact that it's a non-collectible deck building game is that, to me, that makes it a lot easier to be a more I call a more social way of gameplay. Because I mean, recently, I grabbed the Android app version of the recent Magic the Gathering Duel of the Planeswalkers. Again, because it means I don't have to buy cards. I just buy the one thing and I just play through as I see fit, and I get the same enjoyment. I just don't need to buy more cards and more cards and more cards to be competitive. It's based on how good I am at playing rather than my wallet. So that's great to know about. That High Command is a non-collectible deck building game, and I'm sure there'll be more expansions, obviously, in the future for the Warmachine and Hordes parts of that. Cool. What else have we got? Are there any particular new books coming up for Warmachine or Hordes? Expansion books or...
Machine Vengeance will be out sometime next year.
Okay.
That'll be the next Warmachine anthology book.
Okay.
And of course, we have coming out in September Iron Kingdom's role-playing game, Book 2, Kings, Nations, and Gods.
Okay, well, we will talk about that in a bit more in a moment. Mike, do you have anything more you wanted to ask? Anything Hordes-wise in particular that you're excited that's coming up to be released?
Nope, not really. So Mike, you've got your Scorn group, you've now got your Everblight, so I'm sure you're mostly planning just, your Everblight to be filled out with the more basic stuff that's already available, but... Pretty much, that and finding time to paint.
Time to paint,
That's
yeah.
always an issue.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, so I guess moving on, that brings us to the Iron Kingdoms RPG. Obviously, since we last spoke to Simon, we've had quite a few things out for it. So right now there is the core rulebook, which is great and huge. And Mike, you have a copy of that.
Yep, finally.
Finally, and you. How far are you through reading that, or?
Like 20 pages in.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
History.
And again, like I keep returning to it and seeing like interesting kind of ideas spring from the way you can like mix and match the careers there. And the thing makes that even more exciting is the fact there's been some more releases since then. So obviously we've had No Quarter presents Urban Adventures, which is gives us a short kind of overview of the City of Five Fingers, which is basically a pirate city at the mouth of the Dragon's Tongue River, and it's a good place to have some really diverse type of stories going on because there's so many different people there available. And of course we've got some new careers in there. We got the Thamorite Advocate career, which is great for both PCs and NPCs because it gives you some more necromancy rules and more rules for different undead minions that could be created. We've also had the GM screen, and we showed that in the videos, there's lots of tables on there and there's lots of cool dry wipe health trackers and cool character sheets, and that's all been really useful in the game. We've also had in No Quarter, we've had, since the RPG's been out, we've had about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, is that right? Looking at my list. 5 issues out, and they've had various kind of Monsternomicon, kind of new creatures, or an adventure, or a location, or equipment, or even entirely new careers. So like we said, there's Convergence of Cyrus careers in there now. And we've also had Full Metal Fridays, which is the freebie PDF every Friday from Private Press, and that's had, again, encounters, equipment, new ideas for rules and equipment, and some cool careers and races, like the Sat6 Raiders, which is really wicked.
Totally. Yeah, Full Metal Fridays, like, pretty much just awesome, and
yes.
definitely good thinking, Private Press on that one. It really helps, draw attention to Iron Kingdoms RPG, and just keeps people interested as well, because there's always new free content coming out.
Yeah, and book 2 is coming up really soon, but we wanted to kind of have a steady flow of content out of there leading up to that. So we're finishing up some new stuff we've added, and then starting next month, we're going to just be straight up previewing stuff from book 2 in Full Metal.
Wow.
So we got some pretty cool stuff in the works for that.
Cool. That's really great because it covers. There's each group is each kind of like month has been a particular focus for Full Metal Friday. So there's loads of different things for people to use. And then of course the next book, as you said, Gods, Kings, and Nations, which is the second book for Iron Kingdoms and focuses on the 4 main nations of the setting. So we've got Kador, Signar, Lael, and Ord. And there's some really good stuff that's going to be in that book that we're going to see for the first time. So, Simon, if you want to give us an overview of that book and maybe also say how it compares to and expands upon what some people may already have read in the old D20 world guides, because obviously those exist, but maybe in comparison to this new book, they don't really compare anymore.
So Kings, Nations, and Gods is a gigantic book. I think it's about 400 pages, give or take. And it is an atlas, essentially, with playable material like new careers and classes, but a tremendous amount of setting information on the nations of the Corvus Treaties. And that is the countries of Signar, Kador, Ord, the Protectorate of Menoth, and the divided and occupied nation of Lael.
Mm-hmm.
And we've split the book up into a chapter devoted to each of those. Occupied Lael is almost a collection of 3 small chapters, being one portion for occupied Kador and Lael, one portion for the Northern Crusade, which is occupying the city of Ridden and a significant portion of northeastern Lael, and then Free Lael.
Mm-hmm.
And each of those chapters begins with a really in-depth look at the history of that nation, and then followed by sort of a general overview of the places and cultures and organizations and peoples of that nation, and concludes with a section of playable material, including new careers in some cases, new abilities, new spells, new equipment, new warjacks. I think we added almost every warjack from Warmachine to its associated national chapter in that book, so there's some pretty cool stuff in there. And it's the World Guide's still a great book, and it's still a book that we reference internally and probably will until the end of time. But this book is the exciting thing about this is that because we didn't have to try and do the entirety of Western Imran, these 5 chapters, we really get to zero in on those and get into much greater detail than we've ever done before. And it's all accompanied by amazing new art that really showcases the environments of the Iron Kingdoms, which is something we've never really had the opportunity to do before. Just do these beautiful panoramic city shots and really bring the place to life. And I think one of the most exciting things about working on the book was getting to see these places finally illustrated. And Matt Wilson, our founder, he was continually sort of just blown away and flabbergasted to finally see these things that he's had in his head for 10 years, and the rest of us have all been imagining too, lavishly illustrated. So I wouldn't say that this book invalidates the World Guide, but it's much greater detail on the portions that we bring into it. And of course, the parts that we haven't done yet, we're going to explore in the next 2 core books, which will be exploring the wilderness and the wild groups of Western Imran, and then the 4th book will explore sort of ancient empires like Krix, Rule, Ios, and the Scorn Empire.
Brilliant. I mean, obviously, it's a pain to wait for that, but fortunately, you've got in the next No Quarter, you kind of make anyone that's a fan of dwarves and stunty people, there's going to be some stuff in No Quarter which covers them, with the fact that we get to see in the roleplay rules, we get the warcasters from Rule, and we also get their warjacks as well. So that's good in that forthcoming issue. So I'm quite excited to see that. Yeah, the Gods, Kings, and Nations sounds like awesome. The fact we get all the miniatures I've been painting in the last month suddenly become extra usable. I can finally pound my players with a Protector of Menoth, Crusader, or worse, a Cadoran Juggernaut. That'll be quite scary. I'm not quite at that level yet. I mean, because I'm playing in a setting that's a few years before Lael Falls, but I plan to work in some good politics about how Lael falls. So I'm hoping this book also gives me some insight in the how that actually, a bit more detail in how that all happens.
I think one of the interesting things about the book actually is that you'll get a lot of use out of not just the Laeli's history section, which will give you a Laeli's perspective on the invasion and occupation. But if you go back and read the section of the Cadoran history that gets into that, you'll sort of both sides of the story. And that was interesting because, we repeat a lot of the events in those different history sections, but Doug, who did the bulk of the writing on those, took really great pains to give each history its own sort of voice from that perspective, and highlight or subtly ignore certain facts from each one, just like a country will writing its actual history. So if you want a really comprehensive look at the total history of the nations of the Iron Kingdoms, if you read all of those, you get a really well-rounded approach. But if you only read one, you might be missing some of the facts.
Cool. And as I said, there's some new careers in there as well. So I guess these are careers which are very emblematic of the nations detailed in this book. So what kind of new careers can we expect to see?
Well, in some cases, careers that made sense for factions, for various nations, were already pretty well represented by combinations of careers from the core book. Like, a Winter Guard is basically a soldier who uses a blunderbuss. So in some cases, we've given kind of options or suggestions for which careers to pair and what equipment to make that, and then we add that equipment where necessary, like the Winter Guard blunderbuss is in the book, and we give you a paragraph or two that suggests how to build a Winter Guard out of the book 1 careers, because we didn't want to create a new career for every single soldier and archetype that's available. But when there were new ideas, we wanted to explore those. So we added new careers that some of them are a little on the more generic side, like Horseman, which is available to Cadorans, and pretty much everybody can get access to that, although it's in the Cadoran section because it has the most applicable use there with the Iron Fangs as Ulans. But everybody can take those, or that Horseman career. But then we added really iconic stuff like Stormsmith was a new Signarin career. which wasn't really going to be able to be replicated by existing careers because it's so equipment based. And then we added all of their new equipment. And then we didn't just add new military stuff from Warmachine, we added some new stuff too, like the Arcane Order of the Trident, which is the Ordic military's sailing battle wizards. These are
solid.
The naval officers and battle wizards who accompany the Ordic fleet in major engagements. So we added a career for those guys who, if you want to play an Ordic sorcerer or arcanist who has a background in the military and the Navy, he's a cool option for you and things like that. So we got a whole bunch of new stuff in there for both from both existing careers, new equipment, and totally new careers.
That's excellent. Yeah, I mean, part of me always is thinking, it'd be great to run a whole just pirate-based Iron Kingdoms game at some point, simply because there's so many careers that work for that really well. Already in the core book, and obviously have been brought out in either, Full Metal Friday or No Quarter, or will be in the next book as well. There's just so much good stuff. I mean, again, that just represents how good the career system is. You mix and match, and you can represent pretty much any form of character type quite happily. Cool. Mike, do you have any specific questions with regard to this book, or is there anything in particular looking forward to reading up on?
Definitely Lael is of interest, so yep.
Yeah.
I'll be excited to see that.
Yeah, I'm excited for Lael simply because my wife's character is a daughter of some earl from Ridden, so there's the idea of I wish I could play long enough, or at least return every so often with a few years downtime, and have her character have to deal with the fall of her country, and that would be really awesome to go through. Cool.
That was one of my favorite chapters to write, actually. We wrote it in the present of the setting where it's been occupied and divided, but the resistance stuff I thought was really some of the best material in the book, in my opinion, because we got into, their situation is deteriorating and declining, and they're on their last legs in a lot of ways. And the sort of desperate insurgency that they're having to conduct at this point is really compelling storytelling, I think. And the opportunities for people to tell exciting and sort of a different kind of story for a lot of traditional fantasy role playing games is really just waiting for you to take it and put it together.
And then the other thing that's being they're slowly being released is all the novellas and novels from Skull Island Expedition. So I've been reading Exile in Arms, which is characters of Rutger and Tarin de la Ravisi, and that's awesome because, again, that's a story that looks at those mercenaries as they aid an Earl of Lael and help him to get out of Lael as the Cadoran occupation is occurring, and they travel all the way down to Five Fingers. So again, if you want to get even more of a feel for the setting, all those books are really good. I mean, that one's particularly good as well because people who are familiar with his writing, that one's written by C.L. Werner, so it's wicked. It's really wicked. I've not finished it yet, but it's wicked because everything's in there. Everything's in there. Pretty much any kind of set piece. And again, they're great inspiration for the role-play game as well. So I don't know which one I'm going to pick up next to read, actually, but I'll work that out. Mike, have you picked up any of the books, or is there one you're thinking of grabbing yet?
Well, I am a huge fan of Clint Werner, or Herr Werner, as you may have heard him called. So I might check that out in the future, but no, I'm pretty much gaming fiction out for pretty much the rest of my life, I think. So I might have to pass on it for a little bit.
Cool. So I think that really gives us the product overview of everything that's coming out. Obviously, there's going to be more, and listeners can obviously mostly check out as I rant and rave about things that are cool in the roleplay game, because I'll go, wow, this is awesome, you have to get this. So let's move on to I guess this counts as a topic of highbrow storytelling, Mike, doesn't it?
I think it does. Simon, I know we don't have too much time left, but we wanted to definitely discuss horror in the Iron Kingdoms.
Sure.
I think I argued last time you were on the show that, in my opinion, while you look at Warmachine now and Hordes, they're very much, army-based games with the conflicts going on the battlefield. But if you look at the origins of the Iron Kingdoms, it starts off as a horror game with the Witchfire trilogy, and due to the settings, kind of industrial revolution, clashing with the existence of magic and the existence of faith, you have a lot of opportunities to look at horror themes in the Iron Kingdoms setting. So, having worked on the Iron Kingdoms RPG, and regarding your own experience with horror gaming, such as Unhallowed Metropolis and your gameplay of Vampire back in the day, what features of horror role-playing do you think about when you're writing Iron Kingdoms books?
It really depends on what portions of the books we're writing. One of the things I think that makes Iron Kingdom such an appealing setting is that it's so well rounded, and that if you want to play a horror game, that's there for you. If you want to play a swashbuckling pirate game, that's also there. And if you want to mix the two, there are places where those things intersect. So some material definitely speaks to horror writing much more specifically than others. I remember several years ago I wrote an article for No Quarter magazine describing the Crixian port of Blackwater. And that was a really fun article to write and very horror-influenced. Is this thriving hive of villainy and scum in Crix? It's a pirate port, and necromancers live in these sort of network of caves on the hills above, and they come down to the meat markets in the city, and you can buy humans for experimentation for necromantic purposes. There are places where people are just selling organs in the street, and of course, on top of this, we have this big community of living people who live there and have kind of had to accommodate the Crixians one way or the other. So there was a lot of stuff there where you can talk about societal horror, these groups sort of societally preying upon one another, and how that trickles down to the poorest and most desperate people there. And then you can also do a thing, if you wanted to play a game there, you can have more overt horror where you can have Jack the Ripper stalking your characters in the streets. I think one of the nice things about the Iron Kingdoms is that it has that scope to it, so that you don't want to have just a specific kind of horror. If you want to tell personal horror stories, that option's there. If you want to tell slasher horror, that's there too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's already, quite obvious. Like, one of the encounters in Urban Adventures fits the slasher type of horror, where you're dealing with a kind of a mad doctor kind of character who's got this strange mechanical arm, and he's going about gutting people, and so it really plays to play it allows you to look at a more investigative, procedural kind of story as they track down this killer, as the body count increases. Mm-hmm. Or there's the horror element of, as I said, like dealing with Crix, where it's really over the top, in your face, where they're coming to they're invading your lands, and the first place they end up is they're going to the graveyards, and they're getting all the bodies out because they need them for their own, to build their forces up and to fuel their necromancy. Mm-hmm. I think the other thing that's important about Iron Kingdoms, and I think this is where and it's important to compare it to, say, other fantasy settings, is I think horror sometimes, I feel, loses its edge in other fantasy settings because of the fact that you can sometimes go, it's just magic of some form, and that kind of sometimes really takes the edge off that horror. Whereas I think in Iron Kingdoms, it's quite clear that though there is magic and people know that magic exists to some extent, but it's also being packaged and delivered in the mechanica that they have. That means that the magic is more, because it feels more commonplace. It means that horror, due to that, can feel a bit more extreme, and you can actually, and then the main focus of the horror is not that it has a magical source, or it may even have a non-magical source. The fact is that you can again return to the fact that horror is the world that you know and love being in some way perverted and desecrated, and I think Iron Kingdoms really lends itself well to looking at that, because you can look at because of how important souls are in the setting. So you can, again, it doesn't matter whether you're doing necromancy or it is just some slasher. Again, it's that whole desecration of a person and of ultimately the soul, and it's just really cool. And Yeah, I mean, is there anything? Can you comment on that a bit more, and maybe kind of tease
Sure.
out what I'm going for on it? Because there's so many different things running through my head on this. Because obviously there's the interaction of like how faith works in the setting, and then there's the alchemy, and then what things that in the setting people consider folklore. Because obviously you've got Gatormen in the war game, but how well known are those things to the populations of the Iron Kingdoms?
Sure. I mean, I think if your players are willing to sort of have a little bit of pretend ignorance, that, some things they may know as a player, the people of the Iron Kingdoms, they know that there are Gatormen out there in the swamps, and they have their weird tribes and stuff, but they probably don't know that the Gatormen have Bokors who engage in some pretty powerful death magic. So, if your players are kind of willing to let you play along, or they don't even know that themselves, there's all sorts of weird twists you can do. There's horror in unexpected places in the Iron Kingdoms. Even if you look at the convergence of Ceres who we were talking about, who, by and large aren't really something you would think of as being horror themed. We like to joke at the office that, the convergence are at heart a machine worshipping death cult.
Yeah.
Their major goal is to transcend the flesh and be become one with these machines and inhabit a machine physically. And that's a pretty frightening thing when you really think about it. They may not be Cryxian necromancers, but they're definitely, dealing with powerful soul magics. And I hope I'm going to get Doug Seacat on the show to talk to you about that kind of stuff in much greater depth than I am really capable of doing. Doug, Doug's the architect of our cosmology.
Yeah, I was going to say with the convergence as well, they kind of represent the real kind of heartless, or a full representation of the heartless kind of horror of industrialization, because obviously we know the horrors of industrialization from our own world history, and you can again inject that into the Iron Kingdoms, where you have massive factories where people are suffering grievous injuries as these machines are tearing through and creating things. To think that then is almost exemplified by the fact that there is a group of people that just want to become machines and remove the body and tear the souls out is really creepy. And there's also, as you say, Gatormen. I think is really great. And I think another good thing about Iron Kingdoms compared to a lot of other fantasy settings is it breaks a lot of the traditional cliches. So like you've got some fairly I feel a fairly kind of unique takes or are in their own right fairly unique races added into the setting, which obviously add to that element of weirdness and make things feel unsettling. In particular, I think the Pharaoh are a great example of that, because they kind of again play into the whole thing that pigmen are kind of weird, like that bit in Willow where they get turned into pigs at that point. That's really foul. And then add on top of that, you've got like Dr. Arcadius, and doing his experiments. That kind of again pushes that whole kind of the island of Dr. Moreau kind of horror. And I think, again, that's something that could be, again, quite happily put into the setting.
One of the fun things about the Pharaoh is we set them up very as sort of straight men, right? Like, we play them for laughs to a certain degree. They have funny rules like bacon, where the war beasts eat the remains and the corpses and stuff. But when you really take a strong look at what's going on there, it's really quite sinister. Not only do you have Dr. Arcadius, who is performing these pretty nightmarish Frankenstein experiments on the Pharaoh, but he's doing it in collusion with a Pharaoh warlord who, wants to rule the world. He's never going to, but he has delusions of grandeur. But he's willing to, have his own people chopped up and turned into these nightmarish machine Pharaoh hybrids without a second thought. When you really start to look at that and what's going on there and what would be happening to make that happen, it's a pretty great horror setting. There's a little bit of Dr. Moreau there. There's a little bit of Apocalypse Now going on, a little bit of Frankenstein, and it's those weird meeting places that I think are some of the most interesting things about the Iron Kingdoms and horror in particular happen.
And another thing also that I think I'm hoping the Gods, Kings and Nations will give us some insight into, or at least I hope like either a no quarter or a Full Metal Friday, or it's in a no quarter, a really in an older no quarter, which I need to then go find somewhere and order. Is I'd be really interested in knowing like what counts as like folklore within the Iron Kingdom setting, because obviously what things are myths or people don't know are real or not. kind of like getting into kind of like the kind of Sleepy Hollow kind of style stories and so forth. And if those type of things exist as kind of story hooks within the setting, because I think that would be really fun to play out. And again, so we can again play up what the common man in the setting knows, and then you can use what they don't know as a way to then approach horror. So will we get a bit of that in the next book, or is that maybe something for the future for some other supplement?
Kings, Nations, and Gods is pretty focused on urban environments.
Mm-hmm.
There's certainly a little bit of that in there, but I would say you're going to find more of that in book 3 when we start talking about rural communities and places like that.
Okay. And then I think the other important thing with horror is, what things would you say are unique or genre-breaking elements of which count towards horror in Iron King's RPG? So obviously we've talked about the idea of there's kind of things that fit into the kind of Frankenstein monsters kind of thing. Then there's kind of the machine horror element. We also have ghosts, because in One No Quarter there's full rules for ghosts and spectres and the ghosts of the elves, the Riven. So do you want to comment on what things are kind of like not in the setting, or are in a setting but they're kind of twisted and a bit different? So I'm like thinking werewolves or vampires or demons and the infernal and so forth.
Yeah, I think you named 3 really good examples right there. We have all 3 to some degree. Our werewolves are called warp wolves, and they are actually ritual creations of the Circle Orboros. And the druids have people go through this ritual transformation that turns them into warp wolves, and then they become beasts of war for the Circle, guardians and protectors and stuff. And it's not the traditional transmission by bite. They're made beings. There's a little bit of I can't think of the word I'm looking for right now, but there's an element where they're created. The horror in that case isn't so much that the person has been transformed into the werewolf, it's that somebody convinced them this was a good idea. Most of them are volunteers. And we have, as far as vampires, we don't really have the traditional vampire, but we have a number of beings and things that suck energy or souls in one degree or another. Our iron liches manipulate soul energy, as sort of almost like currency. And then, of course, we have our infernals, who kind of take the place of demons in our setting. And they're these otherworldly, extremely powerful and violent and soul-hungry beings from somewhere else, somewhere outside the known realms of our cosmology. Kane, the physical, Urkane, the afterlife, and even outside the void, which is a very frightening place that seems to exist as some kind of profane rent in the afterlife. And the infernals come from somewhere far outside of that, and there's a lot of suggestions that they were involved in how humanity came to find magic. And supposedly when humankind found magic, a deal was done on their behalf that may be coming due fairly soon. So that's kind of where our demonic pacts and devil's bargains come in.
That's pretty awesome, yeah. And that's interesting with the infernals because of how that plays into the Thamarites, because obviously Thamarites can be used as NPCs, as the classic kind of necromancers, but Thamarites are not just, they're not evil. They're more, they commit what others may consider evil acts, but what they think is more of an expression of pure freedom and the harvesting of knowledge and of power. And so obviously they don't want to be used by the Infernals, but they also consider they might summon an Infernal if they ensure they have control. So that's also an option for some really interesting gameplay if you have a Thamite player in your roleplay group, which would be nice and fun. Also in the setting you have some form of Fey-like creatures, but again they're slightly different to say what we know from, well, slightly different and slightly similar to Fey creatures in say other fantasy and supernatural settings. So do you want to give us a brief overview of the Fey, or what weirdness can we expect?
The Grimkin, and they're probably the closest thing to those kind of folklore monsters you were talking about before.
Okay.
Doug would actually be a much better person to talk to about the Grimkin than I am, though he's much more up on.
Okay. And I think, Mike, do you have a few more questions? Because I was going to go on to what's interesting is how, say, also with how Menoth is, the Protectorate of Menoth is quite interesting. Because again, I think there's, even though they may look on the outside look fairly like some form of degree of moralistic good guys, there's some pretty evil groups within the Protectorate of Menoth.
Perhaps, but there is one thing on your list here that you kind of just glanced over, and that's the Orgoth. So that was the nation or faction that invaded the Iron Kingdoms previously, and I think they're pretty interesting and can really expand some of the horror elements because we don't really know a whole lot about them. There's not like a lot of information written up thus far. And they've left ruins and a lot of strange contraptions everywhere, so that can give you a lot of interesting exploration. Even kind of, I know it's a term I use a lot on the show, but like xenoarchaeology, that kind of thing, exploring what has happened here in the past and kind of figuring out what you could use and the horror and issues that could come of that.
Yeah, because again, one of the Full Metal Full Metal Friday, things there's an Orgoth tomb which you can plunder, and so it has some creatures, and it has an artifact in there which again is some kind of weird mask that does stuff. I'm not going to go into too much to that, so someone can read it. And then of course there's the whole career based around their artifacts, which of course is the Doom Reaver Berserkers, which have an entire Orgoth. They have Orgoth weapons. These I guess the easiest way to say is there's some weird soul-filled screaming blade that whispers to them and drives them insane, and that's pretty creepy. That's creepy stuff there, and that just gives you even just a little taster of what the Orgoth have that you could pick up. And I really hope at some point in the future it'd be really, really interesting to know what horrific things exist in the jungles of Zu, the other continent, the one other continent that we so far know of. I mean, there's a in the expanded bestiary that you can get free. There's a headhunter, so there's I think it's kind of a lizard-like kind of creature. But again, I have no idea what could be on Zu. I'm sure there might be something extremely terrible that you would just wish was left in the jungle. So I look forward to seeing whatever happens with that. Mike, was there anything else you wanted to go on with, or is there anything we should finish off with talking about? Or some conclusions? Yeah. I think the one thing with Iron Kingdoms, I think why the horror element is good to play is because I think even though it's a fantasy setting, because it's a pre-industrial into an industrial revolution, I think the world is very easy to kind of sympathize and imagine because you have these urban environments, and I think there's also equally enough computer games out there, other computer games, which can give you the right look and feel. So I'm thinking like Assassin's Creed gives you ideas of like, what a city could look like. So they're wonderful 3D cities, and you can get an idea for the feel of how they can be really built up. And once you have that, once you have an understanding of what it would be like to live as just a normal everyday man or woman in these worlds, you can then see how those places that should be nice and safe and sound can be turned upside down by whatever thing it is, whether it's mystical, alchemical, or something that existed in folklore, or some weird race can turn your world upside down. And that's what brings the horror into the world, is that perversion and desecration of what is meant to be a normal day where you're doing your rounds and you're working in the forge and you're making some weapons, and suddenly gator men or something come out of nowhere. And or obviously you get into the weirdness of you find out your parents' grave has been dug up, and that brings all the worries of the undead or something like that. And to me, that's really how you can play Iron Kingdoms with the horror, is just turning what is meant to be normal upside down.
Yeah. Like you kind of mentioned, the one of the great things with the Iron Kingdoms is that it's a very recognizable world, right? It's easy to immerse yourself in it because it's not that far off from our own history and our own recent history at that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a question of if as GM, getting your characters to be comfortable with the world and to expect certain things from their routines and the kind of games you tell them. When you want to add that horror aspect to it, it's not going to be very much work for you to ratchet that up and make them really tense and anxious.
Cool. Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, you got any more comments on that, Mike?
Not particularly. No. I think it's getting to be about time to wrap this up, however.
Yes.
So, Simon.
We're $2,000 from our next stretch goal. $2,000 stretch goal, and I know there's I'm going to have to help write in a moment.
Oh my god, right, okay, cool. So, yeah, let's rattle off all the things where people can find stuff, get in contact, and what stuff they can grab, yada yada yada. So, obviously, Simon, where can people find out about Privateer Press and the Kickstarter right now? And get in contact with you, yeah.
For anything Privateer Press related, privateerpress.com is going to be your kind of one-stop shop. Follow Privateer Press on Facebook or Twitter. We stay up to press on our news. And right now we are on Kickstarter at Warmachine Tactics. You should be able to find us really easy. We're a staff pick, which is very cool. And we'll keep churning this campaign out. And if you need to get in touch with me directly for anything community related, you can contact me at simon@privateerpress.com.
Excellent. And of course, we'll try and put as much of these things and links to stuff we've been talking about in the they'll be in the below wherever in the show thing on the website. Right. Yeah, that pretty much covers that. Mike, we have various ways of being in contact, so we obviously can be contacted at where?
darkerdaysradio@gmail.com is our email address. We have our G+ community, Darker Days Radio. We have facebook.com/darkerdaysradio. And then we're on Twitter as @darkerdaysradio.
Yeah, we have a Tumblr where I just keep reblogging pictures because there's a lot of good Warmachine and like artwork that turns up on there. World of Darkness artwork, miniatures right now. I'm reposting my miniatures there. Yeah, that's pretty much it, I think. So, Simon, thank you again for being on the show. It's been great talking about everything because it's pretty much a really good time to be talking about everything. So, thank you again, and just, I guess, good luck. Don't go insane with the Kickstarter. And I hope it goes as far as you can get it, really.
Yeah, thanks again for having me on the show, Chris and Mike. And just if I can just say something to anybody who's listening who's backed us on Kickstarter, thank you so much. Everybody here at Privateer Press, I keep saying we're overwhelmed, but it's the only word to use for just how blown away we are by the support of our community and our audience in seeing this video game happen. So thank you, every one of you, for your help.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah. I think pretty much everyone who's involved with Dark Days now is maybe pledged, or I need to whip them to get them to pledge. So it's going to happen.
You don't need to do that.
But, no, I mean, thanks to you guys and anybody listening who has supported us. Just thank you.
So I'd say we'll plug everything, we'll link everything, and that's pretty much it. So I think at that point it's the time to say goodbye. So thanks for listening.
Yep. Thank you, Simon. Have a good night.
Thanks. Have a good one, guys.